I'm Chef Pete Truzziak, and today I'm going to show you a very popular Mexican dish, Chile Rellenos. I'm going to start off by roasting the chilies, as well as I'm going to be making a sauce for this dish, and that's going to require some roasted tomatoes. So I'm going to mix the poblano peppers with the tomatoes in a big mixing bowl. And the way I'm going to roast it, those of you who have watched the few episodes Cooking from the Cave, you know that I have a electric cooktop in here. I'm going to be doing this under my broiler. And you can use your broiler if you don't have an open burner, or if it's too cold outside to do this over the grill. So we're going to actually put this on a broiler pan. I have my broiler preheated. Preheated at about 550. And that's just to make sure that when everything goes in the oven, the peppers and the tomatoes, it's nice and hot, and we can start to get a really good char on it. The reason why we're roasting the peppers for this, it'll soften up the meat of the peppers, and the reason why we're roasting the tomatoes for our roasted tomato and chili sauce is because it'll bring out the natural sweetness in the tomatoes. So at this stage, we're going to put it in the oven. And timing wise, this will be about 6 to 7 minutes. You're going to want to rotate the peppers in between so that it browns up on all the sides, and then we'll come back and we'll continue that up, and I'll show you what happens next. While our peppers and our tomatoes are roasting in the oven, I'm going to start to dry roast our Anaheim peppers. I have 2 of them. And dry roast our pasilla peppers. I have 2 of those in a cold pan. I'm going to turn it on to high heat. This is where the smoke and the steam that creates in this pan is going to really permeate your kitchen, so you might want to turn your hood on just so you don't kind of smoke yourself out. In this process, what happens is it'll soften up the peppers, and it really begins to sweeten them too. So that's why we're doing it in a dry pan. We'll then add more ingredients to build that sauce. So here's a good time. We can now check on our peppers. See how everything's going in the oven. It's been in here now for about 2 minutes. What you'll have is you'll start to get blistering on the top. And they're just about ready. Our tomatoes are starting to split over here for our sauce, but our peppers are starting to blister, so we want to get them back under that broiler and let them cook for about another 2 minutes before we actually rotate them. I'm going to bring you back, or bring your attention back to what's happening in the pan. Peppers are starting to soften up a little bit because of the heat, and I'm really starting to develop a lot of flavors through or with those peppers. So it's really starting to get, you get that real strong pepper smell in here. While this is cooking, we can actually start another step in our recipe, and that's going to be to make the batter for our chili rellenos. Let me grab the ingredients for that. I'll be right back, and I'll show you how to do that. I gathered our ingredients for our batter for our chili rellenos. Let me go through it real quick. It's 1 3/4 cups of milk, 1/2 cup of oil. We're going to whisk the wet ingredients together first. 2 whole eggs. Teaspoon of salt. And this is very much like making a tempura batter. 1 tablespoon of baking powder. And then 1 3/4 cups of flour. I've seen recipes where we'll substitute beer out for the milk and the baking powder. It'll create the same effect. It'll give you a little different flavor profile, but that's another alternative to this recipe. Once our batter is combined, we can now check on how our peppers and our tomatoes are doing in the oven. And they are looking fantastic. See how golden brown the peppers now are. We're just going to rotate them so we can get the other sides. They're real slippery too. Alright, tomatoes are still doing fine. They're caramelizing nicely. Give those about another 3 minutes in the oven. We'll pull those peppers as well as the tomatoes out, and we'll finish up our sauce, and we'll get those tomatoes or the peppers into our bags for our chili rellenos. Let's check on our peppers and our tomatoes in the oven under the broiler. It's been right at 7 minutes. Our batter is done for the relleno, so we're going to set that aside. I do like to make that ahead of time. Just get it going right when you start the peppers. Plenty of time, 30 minutes probably start to finish, so let it sit there. It'll kind of just relax, and then when you dip those peppers in that batter, it'll hold on to the pepper, the meat of the peppers, a lot better if it can have some time to relax. Let's take a look at these things. These are great. You don't want to overcook them, and they get really soft. So they still have some texture to them. You can still feel they're not going to break apart when you touch them. We're going to get those into a Ziploc bag. Before I do that, I want to point out my tomatoes here too. Nice caramelization. That's really going to add to the sweetness of this sauce once we combine all of our ingredients. So these look wonderful. This is what you're looking for. You don't want them too dried out because you do want some of that moisture left in those tomatoes. Now for the peppers, I find that either getting a good Tupperware container or a Ziploc bag, something that'll seal up, is the perfect answer to get these tough skins off of here. We drop them in the Ziploc bag, or you'll put them in your Tupperware. And all I do is I'll seal up my bag like so. I'm going to move these into the refrigerator, and you can already start to see the steam appearing on the inside of the bag. That's good. That will help the skins basically fall right off when we're ready to assemble our chili rellenos. Now let's complete our sauce for the chili rellenos. First thing you want to do is the peppers that were in the pan, they're going to be warm, they're going to be a little hot. You're going to want to peel off those stems. You don't want to grind these up. It's going to leave kind of a chalky flavor if you do. A little seeds in there is okay. You don't want a lot. So these pasilla peppers still have their stems on. And what I'll do is I'll just kind of pull the stems out and remove that little pocket of seeds in there. Put it back into my pan that's still hot. I'm going to scrape all my tomatoes in here. I'm going to add 1 half diced red onion. I'm going to add onion, garlic powder, a touch of cinnamon, a little bit of cumin, oregano, and also salt in here. And then I'm going to add 2 cups of chicken stock. And just adding that 2 cups of chicken stock is just smelling great right now. Get this back up to a boil. Once it comes up to a boil, I'm going to let it simmer now for about 15 minutes. And that's going to really soften up what's remainder of the peppers and soften up all the flavors. It's also going to help everything combine together. So in about 15 minutes we can come back, take a look at this, and we'll start and we'll check on how our peppers are doing in the refrigerator. I'll show you a great side dish for these chili rellenos. It's going to be some Spanish rice. I'm using white rice. Brown rice would be fine too for this. And my ratio of rice to liquid, and we're going to use chicken stock, is going to be 1 to 2. So I have 3/4 cup of rice. I have 1.5 cups of chicken stock here. I'm going to go ahead and turn my pan on, pour my chicken stock in there. Before it comes up to a boil, I'm going to add all my seasonings. I've got a little paprika, some dried oregano, Mexican oregano, a little bit of cumin, garlic powder, and salt. Go ahead and put my lid on. And again, making rice, I think we've done that in some other episodes. Let me just go through it really fast for you. Once it comes up to a boil, I go ahead and put my lid on right after I put all my ingredients into it. But once it comes up to a boil, I'm going to go ahead and turn it down to a simmer, as low of a simmer as I possibly can. I'm going to let it cook for about 20 minutes. Sitting in the refrigerator now for about 15 to 20 minutes, our peppers are ready to start to have their skins peeled off. I've done 2 of them already. I just want to show you how I am doing this. I'll just kind of find where there's opening in the skin. We don't want to go all the way down to the meat. We want to keep the meat of the pepper intact as much as possible, because remember, we're going to stuff these with cheese. If you do accidentally get a little tear in it, well, that's going to be your opening. So just remember where it is on the pepper. And just very delicately work your way around. And I lay them out on a paper towel, so if there's any excess moisture, which there might be, it's going to get collected on that towel. Another word of advice, try and keep the stems intact. I broke one putting them in the bag. They just crisped up a little too much under the broiler, but just try and keep them intact so you remember once it goes in the batter and it goes into your frying oil, you can kind of tell which side's the top, which side's the bottom. It also has a beautiful presentation on the plate. If you lose a stem, it's not the end of the world though. Remember that one I showed where it had a little tear in it? Right there. We want to make a small incision only on one side, so I'm just going to find where that little tear was, just to expose the seeds. Don't want to go too big on it. Small enough that you can get the cheese in, but not so big that your pepper will fall apart on you. I want to take a spoon, and I'm going to scrape those seeds out, and I'm going to collect them in this little glass bowl here, or you could put them in the trash. And I like to go as close to the top as possible, keeping everything intact, of course, so because the seeds will be right up there. This is why they take a little while, because you want to be careful, or at least try to get as many of the seeds out as possible. Alright, so our pepper's open. I have a mixture of pepper jack cheese as well as Mexican melting cheese. I'm going to squeeze a little bit of lime juice in here. And I'm doing that instead of adding salt to this mixture. One, cheese is salty enough, but the lime will really help bring out the peppers or the flavor of the peppers. Stir this up. And you can use a spoon, or I'm going to use my hands. I'm actually just going to pack this guy full of the cheese. And I'll continue to do this with the other ones as well. And then we'll batter them and we'll deep fry them. Our chilies are stuffed. Let me show you how to finish up our sauce for our chili rellenos before we actually start to fry them. The chili's inside the sauce itself softened up. The tomatoes are starting to break down. I'm going to pour this all into our blender. And all these flavors are going to combine real easily. Make a pretty hearty, kind of a chunky type sauce. That's going to go pair very well with this. I've been tasting it while I'm making it, and it really has a great smoke flavor to it with a little bit of heat there. So I think you're going to really love this sauce. Sauce can really go on almost anything. I'm going to blend it for about maybe 15-20 seconds, and I'm going to put it back in that pan. Looks great, smells great. Last thing we're going to do, instead of putting salt in here, before we taste it, again, I'm going to squeeze a little bit of lime into this sauce, about a half a lime, and then put it on real low heat on my back burner and move my frying station up here. I'm going to show you how to make these wonderful chili rellenos, and basically the finishing touches. After they're filled, I'm going to lightly dust them in flour. Shake off any excess. Drop it into our batter. Batter is going to really help close up that opening too. Looks almost like an edible glue, if you will. Bring our chili rellenos over to the oil. Put just a little bit in. Let it cook that half. Be careful, this is hot oil. Keep that in mind. And we're going to slowly drop this guy down in the oil. Now our first one that I put in there is already golden brown. I'm going to pull him out so you can see what he looks like. Beautiful looking, the batter, golden brown. what I did while he was cooking to help him brown up on all the sides, because you'll notice it'll start to float on you. Just give it a turn, flip him over, count to maybe 10, and let him be, and he'll just sit there, and he'll cook that underside as well. If he rolls on you, just bring him back over. Sometimes the shape of the pepper will also kind of dip down. But you just want to make sure you get him nice golden brown, like that one. Once he's done, I'll show you how to plate up the whole dish, and we'll be ready for dinner. We've cooked off all of our chilies. I'm going to plate up, and we are ready for dinner. Our Spanish rice. I tasted it. I'm in love with it. I added some refried beans to the menu. Added just a little bit of chicken stock to it. I've been keeping our chili rellenos in the oven nice and warm. There's some avocado over here, beautiful green for the platter, and I'll take a little bit of our sauce. Really focus on getting this right over the top of the chili rellenos, because that's what it's made for. Everything else is great flavor. Just a little squeeze, and there you go. Chili rellenos, a nice roasted chili sauce to go with it, some refried beans and Spanish rice. Thanks for joining us from Cooking from the Cave. I'm Chef Pete Truzek, and I'll see you really soon.